Pastor, I know where the money went. Daniel, you don't know what you're accusing me of. Then tell them why David disappeared. I found the original records. Put that envelope away. Why? Afraid they'll see the truth? David? Daniel, don't trust the church. You're alive? They thought I was gone.
The Sunday service was almost over. The choir sang softly while people gathered their children and prepared to leave. Pastor Samuel Adekunle stood behind the pulpit, smiling. Then Daniel Adebayo stood, heads turned. Daniel walked toward the altar. "Daniel?" Samuel asked. Daniel stopped several feet from him. His hands were trembling. "I need to say something." Samuel's smile disappeared. "Not now." Daniel looked around the sanctuary. 18 million naira is missing from this church. The room went silent. A woman covered her mouth. Daniel pulled a brown envelope from his jacket. And Pastor Samuel knows what happened. Samuel's face changed. Fear. Real fear. Daniel opened the envelope. "I have proof." The congregation stared. Then Samuel whispered, "Daniel." 3 months earlier. Daniel's work was simple. Fix things. Do honest work. Get paid. Go home. That afternoon, he repaired an electrical panel at a pharmacy in Ikeja. The lights came back on. The owner smiled. "You've saved me again." Daniel laughed. "Just send my balance before you forget." Outside, he checked his phone. 3 missed calls, all from the church. Then Grace called. "Daniel, where are you?" "Working." "You need to come to church." "Why?" She hesitated. 18 million naira is missing. Daniel stopped beside his motorcycle. "From where?" "The development account." "Who took it?" "We don't know." Daniel frowned. "Where's David?" Grace went quiet. That's the problem. Pastor Samuel was loved. He had built the church from a rented hall into one of the biggest congregations in the area. He paid school fees, helped widows, visited hospitals. When Daniel lost his job years earlier, Samuel quietly paid his rent. Daniel never forgot it. That was why the missing money troubled him. Inside the church office, Grace spread financial statements across the desk. 18 million was there Monday. And now? Gone. David approved it? That's what they're saying. Daniel looked toward the pastor's office. Have they found him? No. Then someone entered. Peter Nwosu, the church's construction contractor. Peter was in his late 40s, confident, well-dressed, and extremely comfortable around the leadership. He placed some documents on Grace's desk. "Pastor asked me to bring these." Daniel looked at him. Peter smiled. "You're the electrician, right?" "Sometimes." Peter laughed. "Good work. I've heard about you." He left. Daniel watched him go. Something about the man's confidence bothered him. He couldn't explain why. David Okoro had been the church treasurer for 9 years. By Thursday, people were calling him a thief. His phone was off. His car was missing. His house was empty. Security footage showed him entering the church office the night the money disappeared. Nobody saw him leave. That was enough for most people. But Daniel wasn't convinced. He visited David's wife, Miriam. She sat at the table with their 12-year-old daughter. 3 unpaid bills lay nearby. Miriam looked exhausted. "Have you heard from him?" "No," Daniel asked. "What happened Monday?" Miriam swallowed. "David called me." What did he say? He said he'd discovered something wrong with the church accounts. What? I don't know. She looked toward her daughter. He told me not to believe everything I heard. Daniel frowned. Did he mention Samuel? Miriam hesitated. Yes. What did he say? He said, Pastor is trapped. Daniel stared at her. Trapped by who? I don't know. Grace called Daniel privately. I found something. She showed him a transfer record. The 18 million hadn't been withdrawn. It had been transferred. Daniel examined the authorization. This isn't David's signature. Grace nodded. I thought so too. What's the date? Friday. But the transfer happened Monday. Daniel looked at her. Someone created the paperwork afterward. Before Grace could respond, footsteps approached. Pastor Samuel entered. What are you two doing? Checking records, Grace said. Samuel smiled. Good. He looked at Daniel. Everything all right? Daniel nodded. For now. Samuel paused, then walked away. Daniel watched the door close. Someone is building a story. Grace looked nervous. Daniel, I'm not accusing anyone. He pointed at the paperwork. I'm following the evidence. The following day, Peter visited Daniel's workshop. He brought coffee. Peace offering. Daniel smiled politely. What did I do? Nothing. Peter leaned against the doorway. I just like people who work hard. They talked for several minutes. Peter asked about Daniel's business, his family, his church involvement. Daniel answered casually. Before leaving, Peter said, Be careful with church politics. Daniel looked at him. What do you mean? Peter smiled. People can become enemies over money. He walked away. Daniel watched him cross the street. Peter's warning sounded strange, almost rehearsed. Daniel checked the church security system. One camera had gone offline. Exactly 17 minutes, 9:41 to 9:58 p.m. He checked access records. 9:42, Samuel's fingerprint. 9:47, Samuel's fingerprint. 9:51, Samuel's fingerprint. Grace stared. But Samuel said he left at 8. Daniel nodded. Then another entry appeared. 10:03 p.m. Manual override. Service door. Someone entered after the camera came back. Grace whispered, Who? Daniel shook his head. No name. He looked at the screen. That's our missing 17 minutes. Daniel asked Samuel directly. What time did you leave Monday? 8. Did you return? No. Daniel showed him the access records. Samuel stared at them. I forgot. You forgot returning to church? It was a stressful night. Why didn't you tell anyone? Samuel sighed. Because I knew you would misunderstand. Daniel's expression hardened. You're asking me to ignore evidence. No. Samuel looked him in the eyes. I'm asking you not to destroy something you don't understand. Daniel walked away. But one thing was clear. Samuel had lied. The question was why. Samuel preached about division that Sunday. He never mentioned Daniel. He didn't need to. Sometimes, Samuel said, a person becomes so convinced that they are defending truth that they become an instrument of division. People looked toward Daniel. After service, Grace approached. They're turning against you. Daniel looked around. So quickly. Grace lowered her voice. They trust Samuel. Daniel nodded. That is exactly the problem. He remembered David. Everyone had trusted the story before checking the evidence. He wasn't going to make the same mistake. Daniel discovered an archived audio recording in the media room. Office, 11:03 p.m. He played it. David's voice. You promised the money would be returned. Samuel. It will be. When? Silence. David. People trust you. Samuel. Don't lecture me about trust. Then, I am protecting this church. The recording ended. Daniel replayed it. His phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Silence. Then, stop digging. The line ended. Daniel stared at the phone. Someone was watching him. Grace discovered Peter's company had received unusually large church payments. Construction, repairs, emergency work. But some invoices had no corresponding projects. Daniel studied the records. Peter, Grace nodded. Maybe. But we don't know yet. Daniel remembered Peter's visit, his friendly smile, his warning. Then something bothered Daniel. Samuel had authorized several of the payments. So who was controlling whom? Peter Samuel? Samuel Peter? Or were they both hiding something? For the first time, Daniel realized the mystery might be bigger than the missing 18 million. Miriam remembered another detail. The night David disappeared, he had returned home briefly. He was terrified. He told me something. Daniel listened. What? He said, if anything happens to me, check the contractor's records. Peter? Miriam nodded. Then she began crying. He hugged our daughter. Daniel looked toward the bedroom. Did he say goodbye? No. He said he'd come back. Her voice broke. He always kept his promises. Daniel left quietly. Now David wasn't just a missing suspect. He was a husband, a father, a man whose family was falling apart, while strangers called him a criminal. Michael confronted his father. Did you move the money? Samuel was silent. Michael stared at him. Dad! Yes! Why? I was trying to fix something. What? Samuel wouldn't answer. Michael's voice hardened. Is David innocent? Samuel looked away. Yes. Michael froze. You knew? Samuel nodded. Then why didn't you tell anyone? Samuel whispered. I was afraid. Michael shook his head. You taught me that truth matters. Samuel looked at his son. It does. Michael answered. Then why didn't it matter to you? The photograph appeared that evening. Daniel outside the church office. The timestamp suggested he was there during the theft. The image spread everywhere. People who once praised him now whispered. One customer cancelled his electrical contract. Another demanded his money back. Someone called him a thief. Daniel returned home furious. I have evidence. Mama Ruth listened. They don't care. I'll expose them. Why? Because they destroyed my name. Mama Ruth looked at him. Or because you want to destroy theirs. Daniel went silent. She continued. Son, there is a difference between wanting justice and wanting someone to hurt. Daniel looked away. Grace examined the photograph. The image was fake. Daniel's clothing didn't match. The lighting was wrong. The timestamp had been altered. Someone had manufactured evidence. She confronted Samuel. Did you frame Daniel? No. Do you know who did? No. Grace stared at him. You keep saying you don't know. Samuel looked down. Because I'm ashamed of what I do know. Grace froze. What does that mean? Samuel didn't answer. Outside, Grace received a message. Stop asking questions. She looked around. Nobody. Daniel's reputation collapsed. Miriam's daughter was bullied. Miriam stopped attending church. Daniel's business suffered. David remained missing. Then an unknown caller told Daniel, "You're hurting people with your questions." Daniel answered, "Then tell me the truth." The caller laughed. "Truth doesn't fix everything." The call ended. Daniel sat alone. He realized the people behind this weren't simply stealing money. They were using fear. Fear made people silent. Fear made people believe. Fear made innocent people disappear. Daniel prepared to release everything. The audio, the financial records, the fake photograph, the access logs. One post could destroy Samuel, maybe the whole church. Then Miriam sent him a message. "Please find my husband." Daniel stopped. He went to Mama Ruth. "I can expose them." "Yes, but it might put David in danger." She nodded. "Then what kind of victory do you want?" Daniel lowered his head. That night he prayed, "Lord, help me tell the truth without becoming cruel." It was the first time he had prayed about revenge, and the first time he truly surrendered it. Grace discovered an account belonging to Michael. The 18 million had passed through it. Daniel confronted him. Michael admitted his father had asked him to open it. "I didn't know why. Where's the money?" "Most was returned. Most was returned." "Why?" Michael shook his head. "I don't know." Then he revealed something worse. The night David disappeared, Dad came home with blood on his shirt. Daniel froze. "Did you ask him?" "Yes." "What did he say?" "He said he'd made a mistake." Daniel stared at the records. The pieces weren't fitting. Daniel received a message. "If you want David, come alone." He went. An unfinished building stood at the edge of town. A man stepped from the darkness. David, alive, thin, exhausted. Daniel stared. "You're alive." David nodded. "They threatened my family." "Who?" "I never saw their faces." "Why didn't you report them?" David laughed bitterly. "Who would believe me?" Daniel understood. David had become the very thing Daniel feared becoming. A man telling the truth while everyone believed the worst. David told Daniel what happened. He discovered Peter's fraudulent payments. He confronted Samuel. Samuel admitted moving money to cover earlier financial problems. Then Peter arrived. Peter threatened David. Samuel heard him. But Samuel did nothing. David escaped. Later, Peter's men caught him. He was held at a warehouse. David finally escaped and went into hiding. Daniel asked, "What hurt most?" David looked away. "My daughter thought I abandoned her." Daniel said nothing. "I watched her once." "What?" From across the road, David's voice cracked. "She was looking at the gate waiting for me." He wiped his eyes. "I couldn't walk inside." Daniel finally understood. David hadn't merely disappeared. He had lost months of his daughter's life. David had kept copies of the financial records. They revealed years of fraudulent invoices. Peter had been stealing, but Samuel had also authorized payments. Daniel confronted him. "You knew." "Yes." "You could have stopped him." "I tried." "No." Daniel's voice hardened. "You tried to protect yourself." Samuel looked down. "Yes." "You knew David was innocent." "Yes." "You knew he was being threatened." "Yes." "And you said nothing." Samuel whispered. "Yes." Daniel stared at him. Peter may have started the fire. He paused. But you kept feeding it. Samuel lowered his head. One document was missing. The original authorization. Daniel searched everywhere. Then remembered the electrical cabinet. Behind an old panel he found an envelope. Inside, Samuel's signature, Peter's signature, and a handwritten note. If I disappear, check the warehouse. David confirmed the handwriting. Then Daniel saw the date, written before David disappeared. He called Grace. We found it. What? The document that connects them. Grace asked. Are you going to publish it? Daniel looked at the evidence. No. Why? Because I don't want a social media trial. Daniel entered Peter's warehouse. He found fake invoices, duplicate receipts, photographs. Then a folder containing Daniel's name, photographs of his workshop, his motorcycle, his home. Someone had been monitoring him. Footsteps approached. 2 men entered. Has he found it? No. Then find him. Daniel hid. When they left, he escaped through the rear. He drove directly to the police station. Not because he wasn't afraid, because he finally understood. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Sometimes courage is doing the right thing while you're terrified. Daniel handed everything to an independent investigator. The lawyer reviewed the documents. This is serious. Daniel nodded. Can you investigate without exposing David's location? Yes. That was all Daniel wanted. Grace asked, why not release everything? Daniel answered, because I don't want justice to depend on how angry I am. That sentence changed everything. He wasn't giving up. He wasn't surrendering. He was choosing a better method. Samuel stood before the church elders. No microphone, no robes, no title. I lied, he admitted, moving money, hiding financial problems, allowing David to be blamed, allowing Daniel to be attacked, knowing Peter was manipulating church contracts, and remaining silent when David was threatened. One elder asked, why? Samuel answered, pride. Another asked, and fear. Samuel nodded. Yes. He looked around. I wanted to protect what I had built. His voice broke, but I ended up destroying the trust that built it. No one applauded. No one comforted him. The consequences began. The investigation uncovered Peter's network. Fake contracts, inflated invoices, threats, financial manipulation, surveillance, manufactured evidence. Peter was arrested, but Samuel's confession remained part of the investigation. He didn't escape responsibility. He stepped down. He surrendered financial control. He agreed to cooperate. The church established independent financial oversight. The money would be traced. Whatever could be recovered would be recovered. The church would rebuild. Slowly, honestly. Grace found Daniel. I owe you an apology. Daniel listened. I believed the photograph. I understand. I believed Samuel's reputation. So did everyone. I stayed quiet. Daniel looked at her. That hurt. Grace nodded. I know. Daniel took a breath. I forgive you. Grace's eyes filled. But forgiveness doesn't mean what happened didn't matter. I know. It means I don't want it controlling who I become. Grace nodded. For the first time, she understood Daniel's transformation. He wasn't pretending the wounds weren't real. He was refusing to worship them. David finally returned. His daughter saw him first. She froze. For several seconds, she didn't move. Then, "Daddy?" David dropped to his knees. She ran into his arms. He held her tightly. "I thought you left us." "I never wanted to." Miriam stood crying. David looked at her. "I am sorry." She nodded through tears. There was no instant healing. Too much had happened. But the family was together. Later, David found Daniel. "You saved us." Daniel shook his head. "God gave us another chance." David smiled. "Then let's not waste it." The church held a public meeting. People confessed what they had done. Some had spread rumors. Some had judged David. Some had condemned Daniel. One elder said, "We trusted reputation more than evidence." Another said, "We were afraid to question leadership." Grace stood. "We cannot rebuild trust with another performance." The church introduced independent financial oversight, transparent reporting, conflict of interest rules, a formal complaint process. The congregation had to learn something uncomfortable. A Christian institution can love God and still fail badly. Faith does not eliminate accountability. It makes accountability more important. Michael still struggled with his father. "I don't know how to forgive you." Samuel nodded. "You don't have to pretend." Michael stared. "You're not going to defend yourself?" "No." "Why?" "Because I've defended myself for too long." Samuel paused. "If forgiveness comes, let it be honest." Michael looked at him. It wasn't reconciliation yet. But it was the first honest conversation they'd had in months. And sometimes healing begins not with a hug, but with the freedom to tell the truth. Daniel's business slowly recovered. Former customers returned. Some apologized. Some never did. Daniel stopped expecting everyone to understand him. He rebuilt his business carefully. Clear contracts, transparent payments, proper records. He had learned something valuable. Trust should be accompanied by accountability. Then one afternoon, another accusation appeared online. Someone claimed Daniel had secretly taken money from the church. Daniel knew exactly who posted it. He also had evidence. He could destroy the man publicly. He could make thousands of people see what kind of person he was. Daniel stared at the screen. His old anger returned. Grace called. "You saw it?" "Yes. You should respond." Daniel remained silent. "You have proof." "I know." "Then expose him." Daniel looked at the message. "I could." "Why won't you?" Daniel remembered being called a thief. The humiliation, the whispers, the lost customers, the nights he couldn't sleep. Then he said, "Because I know what public humiliation does to a person." Grace was quiet. "I won't ignore the lie." Daniel saved the evidence. "I'll report it properly. But I won't destroy him because he tried to destroy me." That was the test. And Daniel passed. The man eventually called. "I heard you saw my post." "Yes." "You're angry?" "I was." "You could expose me." Daniel looked at the phone. "Yes." "Then why don't you?" Daniel answered, "Because I don't want revenge to become my identity." Silence. "You think you're better than me?" "No." "Then why?" "Because someone has to stop the cycle." The man hung up. Daniel reported the matter through the proper legal channel. No public humiliation. No followers sent after him. No revenge campaign. Justice remained. Hatred didn't. Daniel finally understood. Forgiveness doesn't mean surrendering your boundaries. It means refusing to become your enemy. a teenage boy watched Daniel repair lights at a community center. Uncle Daniel? Yes. Is it true everyone called you a thief? Daniel smiled. Yes. Were you angry? Very. What did you do? I wanted revenge. Did you get it? Daniel shook his head. I got something better. What? I learned that being right isn't enough. The boy listened. You can be right and still become bitter. You can tell the truth and still become cruel. Daniel tightened the final screw. But if you let God change you, the thing that wounded you doesn't have to define you. The boy asked, Did you forgive everyone? Daniel smiled. I'm still learning. Even Pastor Samuel? Yes. Why? Daniel looked toward the sunlight. Because forgiveness isn't saying what happened was okay. He paused. It means I refuse to let what happened own the rest of my life. Sunday morning. Daniel stood outside the church. He hadn't returned regularly since everything happened. Now he walked inside. Nobody announced him. Nobody applauded. He sat near the back. The choir began singing. Daniel closed his eyes. He remembered David, Miriam, the accusations, the photograph, Samuel, Peter, the anger, the desire for revenge. Then he remembered his prayer. Lord, help me tell the truth without becoming cruel. Daniel opened his eyes. The church was still imperfect. Its people were still imperfect. He was still imperfect. But he finally understood. Christianity wasn't pretending people never fail. It was what happened. After failure, repentance, accountability, grace, forgiveness, transformation, the narrator speaks. Sometimes the person everyone calls a liar is telling the truth. Sometimes the person everyone trusts is hiding a secret. Sometimes the crowd is wrong. And sometimes the crowd is right about someone's failure. But before you condemn the person everyone has already condemned, listen, ask questions, seek truth, and when the truth finally comes, choose justice without hatred. Choose forgiveness without pretending. Choose Christ over revenge. Daniel walked outside. The morning sunlight touched his face. He didn't need everyone to believe him anymore. He didn't need applause. He didn't need revenge. He knew who he was. And more importantly, God knew. The screen holds on Daniel walking away. Then the final words. A lie can damage your reputation. Very sorry. But bitterness can damage your soul. Guard both. Hallelujah. God is love.